Yo, Chris, how you doing? It's your friend Vince Russo here. I appreciate you requesting a video voice message from me. Video and audio. Obviously, you're going to hear and see everything that I'm saying. Listen, I'm thrilled to hear that you're a huge fan of the Attitude Era, and quite frankly, so am I. I was also a huge fan of the WrestleMania era back in the day, when WrestleMania first started. Even prior to that, back in the day of Vince McMahon Sr., I was a big fan. But, the Attitude Era did have my thumbprint on it. I appreciate the fact that you're a big fan. As a matter of fact, right now on VinceRussoBrand.com, we go back every single week and we review a show from the Attitude Era. And I'm going to be honest with you, it reminds me of how great that era really was. Now, I want to get one thing straight with you, Chris, so you understand. You mentioned in your message to me that, I was somewhat responsible for The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, people like that. I want to make one thing clear, Chris. These guys were extraordinary performers, some of the greatest performers in the history of wrestling. I was lucky enough to work with an all-star lineup from top to bottom. So when you talk about Rock, when you talk about Taker, when you talk about Austin, you're talking about just gifted performers. Where I take great pride in my writing was when you have such great performers, the challenge is to give them good material every week. You've got to make your material reach their level of greatness. And that's the challenge every week. And that's where I take great pride in my work, because I think week after week after week, they were given the written word, they were given the storyline that went hand in hand with the performance of their character. So I think that's where the writer comes in. Now, you ask about my all-time favorite angle. Without a shadow of a doubt, whenever I'm asked that question, I go immediately to one thing, and that is when Rock joined the corporation. Because, Chris, I got to tell you, creative today isn't like it was back then. If you go back during the Attitude Era and you look at that specific story, you'll see there was probably at least 3 to 6 months where Ed Ferrara and myself planted the seeds for that story. We knew it was coming 3 to 6 months before it happened, and we planted the seed. And I remember there was one particular Raw where, The Rock hit Vince McMahon with the people's elbow. And, I remember Ed and I, being convinced that the people's elbow was such a deadly maneuver. And we said, well, how can Rock drop the elbow on Vince if they're working together? And then Ed and I looked at each other and said, it's an elbow. He's just dropping an elbow. He's not hitting the guy with a pile driver. He's not hitting him over the head with a chair. It's an elbow, but that's how over Rock got the people's elbow. So without a shadow of a doubt, that was indeed my favorite angle, Rock joining the corporation. As far as today's era, Chris, I'm not going to lie to you, and I make it clear, I'm not a big fan. Too much of the emphasis nowadays is on wrestling, more and more on wrestling, the choreographed fight, less and less on characters and storylines. And I consider myself a casual wrestling fan. I like the characters. I like the storylines. I like the dialogue, between the characters. That's what I like. I like when they take the show outside of the building and not everything is in the ring and in one office in the back. And I think they're getting further and further away from that. And with that, we're seeing the audience diminish. So I'm not a big fan. And Chris, I talk about that all week long. I do video podcasting. I don't know if you know or not, but you can check out VinceRussoBrand.com. But listen, man, I appreciate this. I appreciate this talk that I got with you, Chris. Thanks for being a supporter of mine. Have a great day, my friend.
I'm scared to death to fall asleep. My demons will kill me dead. don't wanna fall apart. I'm already gone.